My hands trembled as I pulled into Jessica's driveway after 5 sleepless nights at the hospital watching my mother fight pneumonia. The doctors finally said she was stable, and all I wanted was to hold my 7-year-old daughter Emma and collapse into my own bed. When Emma burst through the front door, her smile lit up my exhausted heart until I noticed the glittering silver studs piercing her previously untouched earlobes. Jessica appeared behind her with a manila envelope casually mentioning she thought Emma would look prettier with earrings. Then she handed me an official invoice for $2,400 labeled Artist Management Services, Emma Davidson Child Model. My world tilted sideways. 5 days earlier, I had been installing brake pads at Henderson Auto Repair when my phone rang with news that shattered my routine. Dorothy, my 73-year-old mother, had collapsed at her grocery store job and was being rushed to St. Mary's Hospital with severe pneumonia. The doctors warned me her condition was critical due to her diabetes complications. Panic seized my chest as I realized I needed immediate childcare for Emma. As a single father since my wife passed 3 years ago, I had always managed our schedules carefully. My brother Jake's widow, Jessica, lived just 12 minutes away and had always seemed eager to spend time with Emma. When I called her in desperation, she answered on the first ring. "Dwayne, of course, I'll take Emma," Jessica had said with enthusiasm that surprised me. "I've always wanted extended time with her. Bring her over right now and don't worry about anything else. Focus on your mother." The relief in that moment felt overwhelming. I packed Emma's clothes, her favorite stuffed rabbit, and her schoolwork while explaining that Grandma Dorothy was very sick. Emma hugged me tightly, promising to be good for Aunt Jessica. Now standing in Jessica's pristine living room, 5 days later, that relief transformed into something cold and unsettling. Emma bounced excitedly beside me, touching her new earrings every few seconds. "Daddy, look what Aunt Jessica got me." She said, "All the models have pretty earrings like these." Models. The word hit me like a wrench to the gut. Jessica smoothed her perfectly styled blonde hair and gestured toward the envelope in my hands. "You really should open that, Dwayne. Emma has incredible potential." My fingers felt clumsy as I tore open the envelope. Inside was a professionally printed invoice with Jessica's name listed as Emma Davidson Talent Management. The itemized charges included wardrobe consultation transportation fees, professional photography sessions, and ongoing management services. "What is this, Jessica?" "Emma's entry into the modeling world," she replied with a bright smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I took her to a casting call at Starlight Talent Agency, and they absolutely loved her. She's going to be famous, Dwayne." Emma tugged on my shirt. "Daddy, I got to wear makeup and pretty dresses and take pictures like a real model. Aunt Jessica said I was the most beautiful girl there." My stomach lurched as Jessica produced a leather portfolio filled with glossy photographs. Each image showed Emma posed in ways that made my protective instincts scream. She wore heavy makeup that aged her face, unnaturally adult-styled clothing that seemed completely inappropriate, and expressions that looked nothing like my innocent little girl. "These are professional headshots," Jessica explained proudly. "The photographer said Emma has natural talent." I studied the photos with growing horror. Emma posed with one hand on her hip lips, pursed in an adult manner. Another shot showed her in a sequined dress that barely covered her knees, looking over her shoulder with sultry eyes that belonged on a woman, not a child. "Jessica, what were you thinking? She's 7 years old." "Don't be so dramatic, Dwayne. This is how child modeling works. Emma loved every minute of it, didn't you, sweetheart?" Emma nodded eagerly. "It was so fun, Daddy. I felt like a princess." My hands shook as I flipped through more images. Each photograph felt like a violation of my daughter's innocence. The poses, the makeup, the clothing choices, all suggested someone had sexualized my baby girl. "You had no right to do this without my permission," I managed to say. Jessica's expression hardened slightly. "I had every right. You left Emma in my care and I made decisions I thought were best for her future. Besides, I already signed the contracts." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. "What contracts?" "The representation agreement with Starlight Talent Agency. Emma is now officially represented by their modeling division, and I'm listed as her manager and legal guardian during your absence." Blood pounded in my ears. "You're not her legal guardian, Jessica. You never were." "According to the paperwork I filed, I was acting in that capacity while you were unavailable due to family crisis. It's all perfectly legal." Emma sensed the tension and moved closer to me, her small hand finding mine. The silver earrings caught the light, reminding me that Jessica had permanently altered my daughter's body without asking. Who pierced her ears? A professional at the mall. Emma was so brave, weren't you, honey? She barely cried at all. I knelt down and examined Emma's earlobes. The piercings looked fresh, slightly red around the edges. Someone had pushed metal through my daughter's skin while I was 40 miles away, helpless and unaware. "Daddy, are you mad at me?" Emma's voice was small and worried. "No, baby. I'm not mad at you at all." I pulled her into a hug, breathing in her familiar scent of strawberry shampoo and childhood innocence. But even that comfort felt tainted by the heavy makeup smell that lingered on her skin. Jessica crossed her arms. "I expect payment within 30 days, Dwayne. Emma's modeling career is just beginning, and these initial investments will pay for themselves quickly." "This isn't over," I said quietly, gathering Emma's things. "Actually, it's just beginning." Jessica replied with a smile that made my blood run cold. As we drove home, Emma chattered about her modeling adventure while I processed the magnitude of what had happened. Someone I trusted had violated my daughter's innocence, committed her to contracts I knew nothing about, and then demanded payment for the privilege. The foundation of everything I thought I knew about family loyalty had crumbled beneath my feet. The next morning, I called in sick to work and began investigating Starlight Talent Agency. What I discovered made my stomach turn. Online reviews painted a horrifying picture of a predatory operation that targeted vulnerable children and desperate parents. Multiple families described losing thousands of dollars to fake modeling opportunities and exploitative contracts. One review particularly caught my attention. They convinced my 8-year-old daughter she would be famous, then demanded $15,000 for a portfolio that was never used. When we tried to leave, they threatened legal action. These people are criminals. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, diving deeper into the company's background. The Better Business Bureau listed 17 formal complaints against Starlight Talent Agency. The State Attorney General's office had opened an investigation into their business practices just 6 months ago. Emma wandered into the kitchen wearing her school clothes, touching her earrings again. "Daddy, when do I get to take more pictures?" "Come here, sweetheart." I pulled her onto my lap, choosing my words carefully. "Can you tell me about everything that happened at Aunt Jessica's house?" Emma's eyes lit up as she launched into her story. "We went shopping for pretty clothes. First, Aunt Jessica bought me a whole new outfit and said I couldn't wear my regular clothes anymore because models have to look special." "What kind of outfit?" "A sparkly dress and special shoes that made me taller. Then we went to get my ears pierced at the big mall. It hurt a little, but Aunt Jessica said all the beautiful girls have pierced ears." My jaw clenched, but I kept my voice gentle. "What else happened?" "Then we went to the picture place. There were lots of lights and cameras, and a man told me how to stand and what to do with my face. Aunt Jessica coached me from the side." "What kind of coaching?" Emma scrunched her face, trying to remember. "She told me to look more grown up and sophisticated. She said I had to pretend to be older because little girls don't get the good modeling jobs." The manipulation was even worse than I'd imagined. "Did Aunt Jessica tell you to say anything special about Daddy?" Emma's expression shifted, becoming uncertain. "She said it was our secret game. I was supposed to tell the picture people that Daddy doesn't take care of me very well, and that Aunt Jessica is like my real mom now." The words hit me like a physical blow. I struggled to keep my voice steady. Did you tell them that? I didn't want to, but Aunt Jessica said it was just pretending like playing house. She said if I didn't play along, I couldn't be a model anymore. I hugged Emma tighter, my mind racing. Jessica had coached my daughter to lie about our family situation, painting me as a neglectful father to complete strangers. The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. Emma, do you remember anything else Aunt Jessica told you to say? She taught me a story about how you're always too busy with work to spend time with me, and how she has to take care of me because you don't know how to be a good daddy. Rage built in my chest, but I forced myself to stay calm for Emma's sake. You know that's not true, right? Daddy loves you more than anything in the world. I know, Daddy. I told Aunt Jessica that, but she said sometimes we have to tell stories to get what we want. After getting Emma ready for school, I spent the morning making phone calls. First, I contacted my bank to check for any suspicious activity. To my horror, I discovered that someone had attempted to open a checking account and credit card using Emma's social security number. The applications were flagged for fraud, but the attempt had been made just 3 days ago. Next, I called Emma's school. The secretary informed me that Jessica had contacted them the day after I left Emma with her claiming to update Emma's emergency contact information. She said there was a family crisis and that she would be Emma's primary contact until further notice, the secretary explained. She seemed very concerned about Emma's well-being. What exactly did she say about me? There was a pause. She mentioned that you were dealing with some personal struggles and might not be available for a while. She seemed genuinely worried about Emma's stability during this difficult time. Jessica had systematically worked to undermine my reputation while I was caring for my sick mother. The calculation behind her actions was breathtaking. I drove to Jessica's house that afternoon, determined to get answers. Her husband, Tom, answered the door, looking uncomfortable and avoiding eye contact. Tom, I need to talk to Jessica about what happened with Emma. She's not here right now, he said quickly. Maybe you could come back later. This can't wait. Do you know what your wife did to my daughter? Tom's shoulders sagged. Look, Dwayne, I tried to talk to her about it. The ear piercing the modeling thing. I told her she was going too far. Going too far, Tom. She violated my daughter and then charged me for it. I know, man. Jessica gets these ideas in her head and there's no stopping her. She's been obsessed with this child modeling stuff ever since her own acting career didn't work out. This was the first I'd heard about Jessica's failed acting aspirations. What acting career? She tried to make it in Los Angeles right after high school. Spent 2 years taking acting classes and going to auditions. When nothing panned out, she came back bitter and convinced that she just needed better management. The pieces clicked into place. Jessica was living vicariously through my daughter, trying to achieve the fame that had eluded her. Tom, she told Emma to lie about me being a bad father. She coached my daughter to say I neglect her. Tom's face paled. She did what? Emma told me everything. Jessica taught her to tell the modeling agency that I don't take care of her properly. Jesus Christ. Tom ran his hands through his hair. I knew she was excited about the modeling thing, but I had no idea she was making Emma lie about you. There's more. Someone tried to open bank accounts in Emma's name. Someone contacted Emma's school, claiming I was having personal problems. Someone has been systematically attacking my reputation and my daughter's innocence. Tom leaned against the doorframe, looking defeated. I'll talk to her, Dwayne. This has gone way too far. It's past talking, Tom. I'm involving lawyers and possibly the police. I understand, I really do. If someone did this to our kids... He trailed off, shaking his head. That evening, after Emma was asleep, I called my family attorney, Marcus Rodriguez. I explained the situation in detail, including the unauthorized ear piercing, the fraudulent contracts, and Emma's coached lies. Dwayne, this is serious. What Jessica did constitutes multiple crimes, fraud, identity theft, possibly child endangerment, depending on the nature of those photographs. What can I do? First, we need to document everything. Get copies of all the photographs, the contracts she signed, the invoice she gave you. Second, we need to get Emma to a counselor who specializes in child exploitation cases. She may have been exposed to more than you realize. What do you mean? Predatory modeling agencies often use children in ways that cross legal boundaries. We need to make sure Emma wasn't subjected to anything inappropriate beyond what you've already discovered. The thought made me sick. How could Jessica not see how wrong this was? People justify terrible behavior when they want something badly enough. It sounds like Jessica saw Emma as her ticket to the success she never achieved. After hanging up with Marcus, I sat in my living room staring at the photos Jessica had taken of my daughter. Each image represented a violation of trust that cut straight to my core as a father. Someone I'd trusted with my most precious possession had used her for personal gain, and then demanded payment for the abuse. The betrayal wasn't just personal anymore, it was criminal. The next morning brought a certified letter from Jessica's address. Inside was a formal demand for payment, along with additional documentation that made my hands shake. Jessica had apparently hired a real attorney to draft legal papers claiming Emma owed her money for professional services rendered. The letter stated that Emma Davidson, represented by Jessica Davidson as legal guardian, had entered into a binding talent management agreement. Failure to pay the outstanding balance of $2,400 within 10 days would result in legal action for breach of contract. But that wasn't the worst part. Attached to the demand letter was a copy of a 5-year exclusive modeling contract with Starlight Talent Agency. According to the terms, Emma was committed to accept any modeling jobs the agency offered, with all earnings going toward a $50,000 penalty clause if she attempted to break the contract early. I read the document 3 times before the full horror sank in. Jessica had legally trapped my 7-year-old daughter in a contract that could control her childhood for the next 5 years. If I tried to get Emma out of modeling, I would owe $50,000 in penalty fees. My phone rang as I was reading the contract for the 4th time. Marcus's voice was grim. Dwayne, I've been researching Starlight Talent Agency overnight. They're currently under investigation by 3 different law enforcement agencies for fraud and exploitation of minors. What kind of exploitation? The photos they take often cross into inappropriate territory. They also require families to pay massive upfront fees for portfolios and training, then never deliver on promised modeling jobs. It's a classic scam operation. But Jessica signed a real contract with them. That's what makes them dangerous. They use legal-looking documents to trap families, then demand money when people try to escape. The contracts are designed to be nearly impossible to break. I explained about the $50,000 penalty clause. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. That's extortion, plain and simple. They create a contract no reasonable person would agree to, then use it to hold children hostage financially. How could Jessica not realize this was a scam? Because they told her what she wanted to hear. Emma was special. She had star potential. She could make millions. People abandon common sense when someone promises their biggest dreams. After hanging up with Marcus, I decided to visit Starlight Talent Agency myself. Their office was located in a strip mall between a check cashing store and a discount mattress outlet. The building looked nothing like the glamorous modeling agency I had pictured. Inside, the waiting room was filled with anxious parents and their children. A receptionist with overdone makeup and artificial nails directed me to sit down. The walls were covered with headshots of children, all posed in the same inappropriate adult manner I'd seen in Emma's photos. "Are you here for your daughter's callback?" asked a woman sitting next to me. Her son, who couldn't have been more than 6 years old, wore a suit and had his hair gelled like an adult businessman. "Something like that," I replied. "How long have you been involved with this agency?" 6 months. We've paid $8,000 for Tyler's portfolio and training sessions, but he hasn't booked any real jobs yet. They keep saying he's close to a breakthrough. $8,000. My stomach turned as I realized how many families were being scammed by this operation. A tall man in an expensive suit emerged from the back office and called my name. He introduced himself as Richard Sterling, Director of Talent Development. His office was decorated with fake awards and photographs with celebrities that looked suspiciously photoshopped. Mr. Davidson, Emma is absolutely extraordinary. We see million-dollar potential in that little girl. I'm here about the contract you had my sister-in-law sign. Ah, yes, Jessica mentioned you might have concerns. Let me assure you Emma is in excellent hands. We've already lined up several casting opportunities for her. I want out of the contract. Sterling's friendly demeanor shifted immediately. I'm afraid that's not possible. Emma is legally committed to our agency for 5 years. Any attempt to breach that contract will result in significant financial penalties. She's 7 years old. She can't legally commit to anything. Emma's legal guardian at the time, Jessica Davidson, had full authority to sign on her behalf. The contract is completely binding. Jessica isn't Emma's legal guardian. According to the documentation she provided, she was acting as guardian during a family emergency when you were unable to care for Emma properly. The lie was so brazen that I almost laughed. I was caring for my sick mother in the hospital. Nevertheless, the contract is valid. We've invested significant resources in Emma's development, including professional photography portfolio creation and initial marketing. Those costs must be recovered. What kind of development involves dressing a 7-year-old like an adult woman? Sterling's eyes hardened. We create images that showcase a child's potential. Emma's photos demonstrate her natural ability to connect with the camera. That's a rare gift. It's exploitation. It's business, Mr. Davidson. If you're not prepared for the realities of the modeling industry, perhaps Emma shouldn't be involved. Of course, removing her now would trigger the contract penalties. I left the agency feeling trapped and furious. These people had my daughter locked into a system designed to exploit her innocence for profit, and they were using legal documents to make it nearly impossible to escape. When I got home, Emma was playing in her room. I found her practicing poses in front of her mirror, trying to recreate the adult expressions from her photos. "Look, Daddy, this is my sophisticated face," she said, tilting her head and putting her hand on her hip. Watching my innocent daughter mimic sexualized adult poses broke my heart. The damage wasn't just financial or legal. Jessica and Starlight Talent Agency were stealing Emma's childhood, teaching her that her worth came from how appealing she could make herself to strangers. That evening, I received another phone call that shattered what remained of my stability. Emma's school principal, Mrs. Henderson, called to inform me that Jessica had contacted them earlier in the week with concerning information about our family situation. She told us you were struggling with substance abuse and that Emma might need additional support during this difficult time, Mrs. Henderson explained. She seemed genuinely concerned about Emma's well-being. The accusation hit me like a sledgehammer. "Mrs. Henderson, I've never used drugs in my life." She also mentioned some financial problems and said you might not be able to provide stable housing for Emma much longer. Jessica wasn't just stealing Emma's childhood. She was systematically destroying my reputation to make herself look like Emma's savior. The manipulation was so thorough and calculated that it took my breath away. Has Emma shown any signs of distress or neglect? Actually, no. Emma seems very well cared for and happy, but Jessica was quite insistent that there were problems at home. After explaining the real situation to Mrs. Henderson, I hung up feeling completely violated. Jessica had attacked every aspect of my life, my daughter, my finances, my reputation, and my parental rights. She'd used Emma as a pawn in some twisted fantasy about managing a child star. The financial trap was just the beginning. Jessica had waged war against my entire family, and I was only beginning to understand the scope of her betrayal. I barely slept that night, my mind racing through everything Jessica had done. When morning came, I called Marcus and demanded an emergency meeting. We met at his office at 7:30 before Emma woke up for school. "Marcus, it's worse than we thought." Jessica didn't just exploit Emma. She's been systematically destroying my reputation for weeks. I explained about the school accusations, the bank fraud attempts, and the false documentation Jessica had provided to multiple agencies. Marcus took notes furiously, his expression growing darker with each revelation. Dwayne, this constitutes multiple felonies: identity theft, fraud, filing false reports, possibly even child endangerment depending on what happened during those photo shoots. What's our next step? We contact the police immediately. This has moved beyond civil matters into criminal territory. Marcus called Detective Angela Rodriguez from the county sheriff's office. She specialized in financial crimes and child exploitation cases. When she heard the details, she asked us to come in immediately. Detective Rodriguez was a no-nonsense woman in her 40s who listened to our story with professional intensity. She asked detailed questions about Emma's experience at the modeling agency and requested copies of all the photographs Jessica had commissioned. Mr. Davidson, I need you to understand something. These photos show clear signs of child sexualization. The poses, clothing, and makeup choices are consistent with grooming behaviors we see in exploitation cases. My stomach dropped. Grooming. Teaching children to present themselves in sexually appealing ways to adults. It's often the first step toward more serious abuse. You think Jessica was planning to abuse Emma? Not necessarily Jessica herself, but she put Emma in contact with an agency that specializes in inappropriate imagery of children. We've been building a case against Starlight Talent Agency for months. Detective Rodriguez explained that they had been investigating Starlight for producing and distributing images that fell into legal gray areas around child exploitation. The agency sold photos to clients whose intentions were questionable at best. We need to interview Emma, but it has to be done carefully by specialists trained in child psychology. That afternoon, Emma and I met with Dr. Sarah Chen, a child psychologist who worked with law enforcement on abuse cases. Dr. Chen had a warm, friendly office filled with toys and art supplies designed to make children feel comfortable. Emma opened up, gradually describing her experience at Jessica's house in more detail. What emerged was a picture of systematic manipulation that made my blood boil. Aunt Jessica told me that Daddy doesn't love me as much as she does. Emma said quietly, building a tower with blocks. She said that's why he left me with her instead of taking me to see Grandma Dorothy. Dr. Chen asked gentle questions about the photography session. Emma's answers revealed details that hadn't come up in our previous conversations. The picture man kept telling me to look more like a big girl. He said little girls aren't interesting, but I could be special if I learned to act older. What did you think about that? It made me feel funny inside. I didn't want to act older. I just wanted to go home to Daddy. Emma described being alone with the photographer, while Jessica talked to other adults in a separate room. The man had touched Emma's face and shoulders to adjust her poses, making her uncomfortable. I told Aunt Jessica I wanted to leave, but she said we couldn't go until I learned to be professional, like real models. Dr. Chen's expression remained neutral, but I could see concern in her eyes. After the session, she spoke with me privately. Emma shows signs of having been emotionally manipulated, but no indicators of physical abuse. However, the psychological impact shouldn't be underestimated. She's been taught that her value depends on adult approval of her appearance. Can that damage be undone? With proper support and therapy, absolutely. Children are remarkably resilient. But Emma will need help understanding that what happened to her wasn't normal or acceptable. Detective Rodriguez called me that evening with news that changed everything. Dwayne, we executed search warrants on Jessica's house and Starlight Talent Agency today. What we found is going to shock you. Jessica's home computer contained extensive research into child modeling agencies, including saved articles about successful child stars and their earnings. Her browser history showed months of planning, including searches for how to become a child talent manager and legal guardianship emergency situations. But the most damning evidence was a collection of recorded conversations between Jessica and various family members, including me. She had been secretly recording our phone calls and family gatherings for over a year. She recorded me without permission. Multiple times. But here's the thing, Dwayne. Those recordings actually help your case. They prove premeditation and show that she was planning this for months. Detective Rodriguez played portions of a recording from 3 months earlier. Jessica's voice was clear as she spoke to someone I couldn't identify. Emma is the perfect candidate. She's beautiful, naive, and Dwayne is too trusting to see what's coming. Once I get her into the system, I'll have leverage to keep her there. The calculated nature of her betrayal was breathtaking. Jessica hadn't acted impulsively during a family crisis. She had been planning to exploit Emma for months, waiting for the right opportunity. There's more, Detective Rodriguez continued. We found evidence that Jessica was in communication with several questionable individuals who expressed interest in purchasing Emma's photos. The words hit me like a physical blow. Purchasing them for what? We're still investigating, but it appears some of Starlight's clients aren't legitimate modeling agencies. They're individuals who collect inappropriate images of children. I had to sit down as the full scope of what Jessica had done became clear. She hadn't just signed Emma to a modeling agency. She had potentially put my daughter in contact with predators who wanted to exploit her innocence. Is Emma in immediate danger? Not anymore. We've arrested Jessica and shut down Starlight Talent Agency. But Dwayne, if you hadn't intervened when you did this, could have escalated into something much worse. That night after putting Emma to bed, I sat in my living room trying to process the magnitude of Jessica's betrayal. She had planned for months to exploit my daughter, waited for the perfect moment, when I was vulnerable and distracted, then executed a plan that could have destroyed Emma's childhood permanently. The woman I had trusted with my most precious possession had been plotting against us for months, recording our private conversations and researching how to profit from my daughter's innocence. The betrayal was so complete and calculated that I felt physically sick. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I also felt something else, hope. The truth was finally emerging, and the law was on our side. The next morning brought a call from Tom, Jessica's husband. His voice was shaky and defeated as he asked if he could meet with me privately. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop downtown away from both our homes. Tom looked like he hadn't slept in days. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair uncombed, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. He ordered black coffee with trembling hands and struggled to meet my gaze. Dwayne, I need you to know that I had no idea how far she'd taken this thing with Emma. How much did you know? I knew she was obsessed with child modeling. She talked about it constantly after her acting career fell apart, but I thought it was just fantasy, something she'd get over. Tom explained that Jessica's failed attempts at stardom had left her bitter and desperate for validation. She spent hours watching television shows about child stars, and their managers convinced that she could succeed where others had failed. She kept saying that Emma was her second chance, that she could give Emma the opportunities she never had. I thought she just wanted to be a supportive aunt. When did you realize it was more than that? When you called about the ear piercing. That's when I knew she'd crossed a line. But by then, she'd already done so much more. Tom reached into his jacket and pulled out a manila folder. These are copies of everything I could find in Jessica's office. Phone records, emails, financial documents. I think you need to see what she was really planning. The folder contained a treasure trove of incriminating evidence. Email exchanges between Jessica and Starlight Talent Agency showed that she'd been negotiating Emma's contract for weeks before I left Emma with her. She had specifically requested that the agency schedule Emma's photo shoot during the time I would be unavailable. One email from Jessica to Richard Sterling made my blood run cold. The father will be out of town, caring for a sick relative. This is our window to get Emma established before he can interfere. Once she's under contract, he'll have no choice but to cooperate. She planned this whole thing around Mom's illness. I said, staring at the evidence. There's more. Check the financial records. Jessica had opened a business checking account under the name Davidson Talent Management 3 weeks before Mom got sick. She had also applied for business licenses and insurance policies, positioning herself as Emma's professional representative. Bank statements showed that she'd spent over $3,000 on Emma's modeling preparation photography sessions, wardrobe makeup, and even professional headshots that I'd never seen. She had invested heavily in this scheme, apparently confident that she could recoup her expenses through Emma's future earnings. "Tom, why are you helping me?" His face crumpled. Because what she did to Emma was wrong. And because... He paused, struggling with his words. Because she was planning to do the same thing to our kids. What? Our twins are only 5, but Jessica was already talking about getting them into modeling too. She said Emma was just the beginning, that she could build a whole stable of child models from our extended family. The scope of Jessica's ambitions was staggering. She hadn't just targeted Emma. She was planning to exploit multiple children, turning family relationships into business opportunities. Marcus called while Tom and I were reviewing the evidence. "Dwayne, I've got good news and bad news. The good news is that we found legal precedent to void Emma's contract with Starlight. The agency's criminal investigation invalidates any agreements they made." "What's the bad news?" "Jessica's attorney is threatening a custody suit. They're claiming you're an unfit parent based on the false reports she filed." "Can they do that?" "They can try, but they don't have a case, especially now that we know the reports were fabricated. Still, we need to be prepared for a fight." That afternoon, Detective Rodriguez called with an update that changed everything. "Dwayne, we've completed our forensic analysis of Jessica's computer and phone records. What we found is worse than we initially thought. Jessica had been in contact with a network of individuals who traded inappropriate images of children. Her browser history revealed visits to websites that specialized in sexualized photos of minors, though technically remained within legal boundaries. She wasn't just planning to profit from Emma's modeling career. She was positioning Emma to be part of a larger exploitation network. How is that legal? It's not, which is why we're filing federal charges. The moment she started communicating with these individuals about Emma, it became a conspiracy to exploit a minor. Detective Rodriguez explained that federal investigators had been tracking this network for months. Jessica's involvement with Starlight Talent Agency had unknowingly connected her to a larger criminal organization. The recordings we found on her computer include conversations where she discusses Emma's potential value to specific clients. She knew exactly what she was doing. That evening, I met with Dr. Chen again to discuss Emma's ongoing recovery. She had been working with Emma twice a week since the initial interview, helping her process what had happened. "Emma is making excellent progress," Dr. Chen reported. "She's beginning to understand that the things Jessica told her weren't true, and that the modeling experience wasn't her fault." "How much does she understand about what really happened?" "We're taking it slowly, but she knows that Jessica made some very bad choices that hurt your family. She's also learning to trust her own feelings again instead of seeking adult approval for everything." Dr. Chen showed me some of Emma's artwork from their sessions. The early drawings showed Emma in elaborate costumes and makeup, trying to look older and more sophisticated. Recent drawings showed her in simple clothes, playing with toys, and smiling naturally. Art therapy is helping her reconnect with age-appropriate interests and activities. She's remembering how to be a 7-year-old girl instead of trying to be a miniature adult. Later that night, as I tucked Emma into bed, she asked a question that broke my heart. "Daddy, was I bad when I let Aunt Jessica take those pictures?" "No, sweetheart. You weren't bad at all. Aunt Jessica was the grown-up, and she made choices that hurt you. None of this was your fault." "But I liked feeling pretty and special." "You are pretty and special exactly the way you are. You don't need makeup or fancy clothes or grown-up poses to be beautiful. You're perfect just being Emma." She hugged her stuffed rabbit and looked up at me with eyes that seemed older than her years. I don't want to be a model anymore, Daddy. I just want to be your little girl. And that's exactly what you'll always be. As I gathered evidence and built our legal case, I realized that Jessica's betrayal had actually provided us with the tools to defeat her. Her obsessive documentation, her recorded conversations, and her paper trail of criminal activity created an overwhelming case against her. She had been so confident in her plan that she'd never considered the possibility of getting caught. That arrogance was about to become her downfall. 3 weeks after Jessica's arrest, our attorney Marcus called with news that made me smile for the first time in weeks. Dwayne, Jessica just fired her lawyer. Why? Because he told her she was looking at serious federal prison time and recommended she take a plea deal. She refused and decided to represent herself. Jessica's decision to act as her own attorney was a gift to our case. She had no understanding of criminal law and was emotionally incapable of making rational legal decisions. Her desperation was becoming our advantage. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for the following Monday. Detective Rodriguez had assured me that the evidence against Jessica was overwhelming, but I still felt nervous as we entered the courthouse. Jessica sat at the defendant's table wearing an expensive suit and an expression of defiant confidence. She had clearly convinced herself that she could talk her way out of the charges. When she saw me enter the courtroom, she actually smiled and waved as if we were old friends. The prosecutor, Assistant District Attorney Michelle Williams, presented the case methodically. She outlined Jessica's months of planning the fraudulent documents she had created and the criminal network she had attempted to connect Emma with. Your Honor, the defendant systematically groomed a 7-year-old child for exploitation. She violated the trust of a family member during a medical emergency, committed identity theft, filed false reports with multiple agencies, and attempted to profit from the sexualization of a minor. When it came time for Jessica to respond, she stood up with complete confidence. What followed was one of the most delusional legal arguments I had ever witnessed. Your Honor, I was simply trying to help my niece achieve her dreams. Emma is an extraordinarily beautiful child with natural talent for modeling. Her father was too concerned with his own problems to recognize her potential. Jessica actually argued that she had done Emma a favor by introducing her to the modeling industry. She claimed that the photographs were artistic expressions of childhood beauty, and that any inappropriate interpretations were in the minds of others. Emma loved every minute of her modeling experience. She felt beautiful and confident for the first time in her life. If anyone harmed that child, it was her father by trying to suppress her natural gifts. The judge listened to Jessica's rambling defense with increasing incredulity. When she finished, he asked if she understood the charges against her. I understand that jealous people are trying to destroy Emma's career because they can't appreciate her special qualities. Judge Harrison looked at Jessica for a long moment before responding. Ms. Davidson, you are charged with multiple felonies, including conspiracy to exploit a minor, identity theft fraud, and filing false police reports. This court finds probable cause to believe you committed these crimes. You will be held pending trial with bond set at $100,000. Jessica's confidence cracked for the first time. Your Honor, I don't understand. I was helping Emma become a star. Ms. Davidson, you exploited a child for personal gain. That is not helping. That is criminal behavior. As Jessica was led away in handcuffs, she turned to look at me with an expression of genuine confusion, as if she still couldn't understand why people didn't appreciate her efforts on Emma's behalf. The next phase of our victory came when Starlight Talent Agency was officially shut down by federal authorities. Richard Sterling and 2 other employees were arrested on charges of operating a criminal enterprise designed to exploit minors. Detective Rodriguez called to update me on the investigation. Dwayne, when we seized Starlight's computers, we found evidence of over 200 children who had been photographed inappropriately. Emma's photos were among the most recent, but this operation had been running for years. What happened to all those children? We're working with families across 3 states to provide counseling and support services. Many parents had no idea their children's photos were being sold to inappropriate buyers. The federal investigation revealed that Starlight operated as a front for a child exploitation network that stretched across the country. Jessica had unknowingly connected Emma to a criminal organization that had victimized hundreds of children. But the most satisfying victory came when Emma's modeling contract was officially voided by the court. Judge Harrison ruled that the contract was fraudulent from the beginning because Jessica had no legal authority to sign on Emma's behalf. Furthermore, the judge stated, "The contract itself is unconscionable and designed to exploit minor children. Even if it had been signed by a legal guardian, this court would not enforce such an agreement." The $50,000 penalty clause that had trapped Emma was eliminated with a stroke of the judge's pen. Emma was free to be a normal 7-year-old girl again. 3 months after Jessica's arrest, she was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison followed by 5 years of supervised probation. She was also ordered to pay full restitution for all expenses Emma and I had incurred, including legal fees and counseling costs. At the sentencing hearing, Jessica finally seemed to understand the magnitude of what she had done. She read a prepared statement that showed some recognition of her crimes. "I want to apologize to Emma and Dwayne for the pain I have caused. I convinced myself that I was helping Emma achieve success, but I realize now that I was only serving my own selfish desires. I stole Emma's childhood innocence and violated the trust of my family. I accept full responsibility for my actions." The apology felt hollow after months of denial and delusion, but it was the first time Jessica had acknowledged that her behavior was wrong. Tom filed for divorce the same week Jessica was sentenced. He testified in family court that he feared for his own children's safety and could no longer trust his wife's judgment. "I married someone I thought was caring and nurturing," he told the judge. "I now realize she was willing to exploit children for personal gain. I cannot allow my own children to be exposed to that kind of danger." Emma and I attended the final court hearing, where Jessica's parental rights to her own children were terminated. The twins would remain with Tom, protected from their mother's dangerous obsessions. As we left the courthouse that day, Emma looked up at me with a question that showed how much she had healed. "Daddy, do you think Aunt Jessica will ever understand why what she did was wrong?" "I hope so, sweetheart. Sometimes people need time to think about their mistakes before they can really understand them." "I hope she gets better, but I'm glad she can't hurt other kids anymore." Emma's ability to express both compassion and appropriate boundaries showed me that she was truly recovering from Jessica's manipulation. She understood that Jessica had done wrong while still maintaining her natural empathy. The legal victory was complete, but the emotional healing was just beginning. 6 months after Jessica's sentencing, Emma and I established new routines that celebrated her freedom from the modeling world. Saturday mornings became our special time for activities that had nothing to do with appearance or performance. We would visit the Science Museum, go hiking, or simply build blanket forts in our living room. Emma had been attending weekly therapy sessions with Dr. Chen, and the progress was remarkable. Her drawings now showed age-appropriate scenes, playgrounds, animals, family picnics. The sophisticated poses and adult expressions had been replaced by the natural creativity of a healthy 7-year-old. "Daddy, can we get a puppy?" Emma asked one morning as we walked through the park. "Maybe for your 8th birthday, that's a big responsibility." "I know, but I think I'm ready for big responsibilities now. I learned a lot about being careful who I trust." Emma's maturity came from hard experience, but it was balanced by renewed joy in simple childhood pleasures. She had learned to protect herself without losing her natural openness and curiosity. My mother, Dorothy, had recovered completely from her pneumonia and returned to her part-time job at the grocery store. She often watched Emma after school, providing the stable grandmother relationship that Emma needed. "You know, Dwayne," Mom said one afternoon as we watched Emma play in the backyard, "this whole terrible experience might have saved Emma from something even worse later on." "What do you mean?" And that child has learned to trust her instincts and speak up when something feels wrong. Those are skills that will protect her for the rest of her life. Mom was right. Emma now understood the difference between appropriate adult attention and manipulation. She could recognize when someone was trying to make her act older than her age, and she had permission to say no. The financial restitution from Jessica covered all our legal expenses and therapy costs, with enough remaining to establish a protected college fund for Emma. This time, the account had multiple safeguards to prevent anyone from accessing it without my explicit permission. Tom maintained friendly contact with us, often bringing his twins over for playdates with Emma. He had remarried a woman named Linda, who understood the importance of protecting children from exploitation. Their family had healed and moved forward in healthy ways. I think about Jessica sometimes. Tom admitted during one of our conversations. I wonder if she really understands what she did, or if she still sees herself as the victim. Does it matter? I asked. I guess not. What matters is that our kids are safe and happy. Emma started third grade with confidence and enthusiasm. Her teachers reported that she was social creative and academically engaged. There were no signs of the trauma she had experienced, though Dr. Chen continued to provide support as needed. One evening, as I was helping Emma with her homework, she made an observation that showed her wisdom. "Daddy, I think Aunt Jessica forgot that being a kid is supposed to be fun." "What do you mean?" She wanted me to act like a grown-up all the time. But grown-ups have to worry about money and work and scary things. Kids get to play and learn and just be happy. "You're absolutely right, sweetheart. I'm glad I get to be a kid until I'm really ready to be a grown-up." Emma's insight captured something profound about childhood that Jessica had never understood. Children aren't miniature adults waiting to be discovered. They're people in their own developmental stage, deserving of protection, nurturing, and the freedom to grow at their own pace. The community response to our story had been overwhelmingly supportive. Several other parents came forward with their own experiences of predatory modeling agencies and talent scouts. We organized an information session at Emma's school to help families recognize and avoid exploitation. "The warning signs aren't always obvious," I explained to the gathered parents. "These people are skilled at targeting families during vulnerable moments and making their offers seem like incredible opportunities." We discussed red flags agencies that required large upfront payments, photographers who wanted to work with children alone, contracts that seemed too complex for parents to understand, and any situation where children were encouraged to keep secrets from their parents. "Trust your instincts," I emphasized. "If something feels wrong, it probably is. No legitimate opportunity requires you to compromise your child's safety or innocence." Detective Rodriguez spoke at the session about the legal aspects of child protection. She explained how parents could verify the legitimacy of talent agencies and what to do if they suspected exploitation. The most important thing to remember is that real talent scouts don't target children at shopping malls or approach families through social media. Legitimate opportunities come through established channels with proper safeguards. As I reflected on our journey from victimization to victory, several key lessons emerged that I wanted to share with other parents. First, trust is earned through consistent behavior over time, not through family relationships or emotional appeals. Jessica had traded on her connection to our family to gain access to Emma, but her actions proved that blood relation doesn't guarantee good intentions. Second, children should never be encouraged to keep secrets from their parents or to act older than their chronological age. These are classic signs of grooming behavior that all parents need to recognize. Third, legitimate opportunities for children don't require families to pay large fees up front or sign contracts with severe penalty clauses. Real talent agencies make money by placing children in appropriate jobs, not by charging desperate families for services. Most importantly, I learned that a parent's protective instincts exist for crucial reasons. When something feels wrong, it's essential to investigate thoroughly, rather than dismissing concerns as overprotectiveness. Emma and I had survived Jessica's betrayal stronger and wiser than before. Our relationship had deepened through the crisis built on complete honesty and mutual respect. Emma knew she could tell me anything without fear of judgment or anger. "You know what I learned, Daddy?" Emma said one night as I tucked her into bed. "What's that, sweetheart?" "I learned that you will always protect me, no matter what. Even when scary things happen, you'll fight to keep me safe." That's exactly right. That's what daddies do. And I learned that I'm special just because I'm me, not because of how I look in pictures or what clothes I wear. Emma's recovery was complete. And she understood her own worth independent of external validation, trusted her instincts about appropriate behavior, and felt secure in our family relationship. The trauma that Jessica had inflicted through her selfish ambitions had been transformed into wisdom and strength. Emma would never again be vulnerable to the kind of manipulation that had nearly stolen her childhood. As I turned off Emma's bedroom light and watched her settle peacefully into sleep, I felt gratitude for the journey we had traveled together. The betrayal had been devastating, but it had also revealed the unbreakable bond between a father and daughter determined to protect what matters most. I learned that family loyalty must be balanced with clear boundaries, that trust requires ongoing verification, and that protecting our children sometimes means fighting people we once loved. Most importantly, I discovered that truth and determination can triumph over manipulation and greed when we're brave enough to stand up for what's right. The innocent trust that Jessica had shattered had been replaced by something stronger, informed vigilance, combined with deep love. Emma and I had faced our worst fears together and emerged victorious, our relationship deeper and more honest than ever before. That was the most valuable lesson of all. When families stick together and fight for each other, they can overcome any betrayal and build something beautiful from the ashes of broken trust. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to deal with someone close to you who betrayed your trust in order to pursue their own selfish goals? How did you handle the situation, and what did you learn about protecting your family from people who seem trustworthy on the surface? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video if Emma's story resonated with you. Please subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming family betrayals and protecting the people we love most. And if you know someone who might benefit from hearing about the warning signs of child exploitation, please share this video with them. Together, we can help protect more children from predators who hide behind fake opportunities and family connections. Thank you for listening to our story and for supporting families who have faced similar challenges. Remember that speaking up and fighting back against manipulation is always the right choice, even when it's difficult. Stay strong, trust your instincts, and never stop protecting the people you love.